Tonight in Iran and in Israel, a shaky start to a U.S. declared ceasefire in Washington, and apparently agitated Donald Trump.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
Full coverage from Washington to Israel to the Iran border. As some focus returns to Gaza, a look at a UK protest movement.
I think having so many people on the street definitely sends a message to the government.
And researchers warn of a slowdown in childhood vaccinations.
In many high-income countries, they're related to vaccine misinformation and hesitancy.
But the trend is global and the concerns urgent.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. It's fragile and it's certainly tense, but for now, it appears the ceasefire between Israel and Iran is holding. Both sides say they will stick to it if the other does, and each is claiming a win. Getting to this point is a lesson in chaos. The ceasefire, unilaterally declared by Donald Trump online, both Iran and Israel quickly accusing the other of violating it, and Trump's frustration spilling over in front of the cameras when he dropped an F-bomb. And that was just how the morning started. Katie Simpson takes a look at Trump's struggle to lock the ceasefire down and new questions about just what the war accomplished.
With his ceasefire in jeopardy, a tired-looking Donald Trump unleashed his frustrations, using the kind of language we have to warn you about.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Israel's bombardment of Tehran in the hours leading up to the peace deal angering Trump. Along with accusations, both Israel and Iran exchanged rockets after it came into force.
These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous.
Early Tuesday, as the president departed for the NATO summit, Trump used public pressure to try to keep his deal together. Posting on social media at 6:50 a.m., Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. A message Trump also delivered directly to the Israeli prime minister by phone. At 7:28 a.m., Trump offered an update. Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home, while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. The president appearing confident the war is now contained, defending his decision to enter the conflict.
I think they don't want it to happen again. And Iran's not going to have a nuclear weapon, by the way.
Trump claims U.S. airstrikes obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons program, helping create the conditions for peace. But a preliminary U.S. intelligence assessment suggests Iran's program was only set back by a few months, according to multiple news agencies. Lawmakers were supposed to get details at a classified meeting that's been put off.
Now, this last-minute postponement of our briefing is outrageous, it's evasive, it's derelict.
Trump's critics unsettled by the lack of disclosure.
The real question that people are asking here in America is what the F is Donald Trump doing?
The White House is expected to maintain a pressure campaign to keep this ceasefire alive. They're trying to counter critics who say the U.S. never should have gotten involved out of fear it would expand and prolong the war.
And yet, Trump is being credited and congratulated by some world leaders.
The head of NATO sent Trump text messages calling the U.S. actions in Iran decisive and truly extraordinary, saying it makes us all safer. Trump sees this as a moment to define his legacy. And to that point, he's sharing news articles about how this deal should win him the Nobel Peace Prize.
All right, Katie Simpson in Washington. Now, even in its final hours, that conflict led to more death and destruction. Margaret Evans takes us to the site of one of the last Iranian missile strikes, where for some, hope for the ceasefire is thin.
The cleanup operation in Beersheba after a direct hit by an Iranian missile early Tuesday. Well-practiced search and rescue teams already departed. Many Israelis will have heard about this strike before news of an overnight ceasefire announced by U.S. President Donald Trump. one that didn't start early enough to spare 4 lives lost here. This is a residential building. It was struck about an hour and 15 minutes before that ceasefire was due to come into effect. Trump blamed both Iran and Israel for increasing attacks against each other ahead of the truce.
But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that.
The precise details of the phased ceasefire remain clouded, and Israelis have mixed feelings about whether it will hold.
I think it's not old. No.
Why not?
Because in Israel, every day is war. Every day.
In Tehran, reeling from a barrage of overnight Israeli attacks, some people also expressed doubts over whether a ceasefire will hold. But others held out hope and regret for the lives lost over the past 12 days. This ceasefire should have happened much earlier, says this man, because it's the people who are paying the price, whether it's our people or theirs.
As it played out,
This former British ambassador to Iran expects the country's ruling clerics to hold to a ceasefire for their own sake.
They, at this point, are licking their wounds. The ceasefire is something they will welcome because it allows them to regroup, to take stock.
Whether that ceasefire holds or not, the truce between Iran and Israel has renewed calls for another ceasefire in a war that's been going on much longer and has been much deadlier, the one in Gaza.
And the fighting there, Margaret, hasn't taken a break, even as this newer war has been grabbing the headlines.
That's right, Adrian. Gazans are desperate for a ceasefire. They feel forgotten. And the Israeli families of the hostages still being held in Gaza have also appealed to their government to extend the ceasefire with Iran to Gaza.
All right, Margaret Evans in Jerusalem tonight. With tensions still high, many people continue to flee Iran any way they can. So let's go to Briar Stewart near the Turkish-Iranian border. Briar, you've been speaking with people going back and forth. What are they saying about the ceasefire?
Yes, Adrian, there are hundreds of people down at the border today, and I would say there was a mix of relief and confusion. For many Iranians, particularly those in the northern part, they didn't have access to an internet connection, so they weren't getting updates. But after a week and a half of escalation, people are hopeful that the tension will ease and this fragile ceasefire will hold.
Of course, there'll be a ceasefire, and my government and the Israel. Also, there are some problems, but I hope that the ceasefire will happen.
It's so bad. Sorry, I can't continue. I cry. I was in Iran as a tourist, and I'm very sorry. Who made Iranian miserable, hard life like this? Sorry, I can't continue. Thank you very much.
And Briar, what are people telling you about the effect they think this has had on Iranian society?
Well, I think it's important to point out that whenever we ask about politics or life under Iran's theocratic regime, people either don't want to talk or they want to remain anonymous. There are a lot of divided opinions. You have those that hoped that the upheaval over the last 12 days would have led to the collapse of the regime, and they're disappointed that it hasn't. Others think that this might actually have emboldened the leadership because people are angry at the U.S. and Israel and are tilting inwards.
All right, Briar, thank you. That's Briar Stewart in Turkey tonight. In southeastern Ukraine, at least 17 people are dead after Russian airstrikes. The rare daytime attack damaged dozens of buildings. Local officials say more than 100 people were injured, including at least 18 children. The attack came as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. He is pushing allies for more investment in Ukrainian defense. Well, Canada's defense spending is top of the NATO agenda for Prime Minister Mark Carney. Allies are debating a move to more than double the current target, but it seems as if Donald Trump may believe it's already a done deal. Kate McKenna explains from The Hague.
It's a meeting of 32 allies, but the focus is on just one. U.S. President Donald Trump and his steep demand that allies boost defense spending to an eye-watering 5% of GDP.
When I went to NATO, they were broke. When I first started this whole thing, Seems like a long time ago, 9 years, right? But they were broke. I knew it immediately. I said, you guys are broke.
Trump posted a screenshot of a text from NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte, implying 5% is all but a done deal, writing, "It was not easy, but we've got them all signed on to 5%. But Canada only just committed to hitting the existing target of 2%.
Let's take the 5% of GDP figure, which is a big number.
How much is it actually for you?
5% of our GDP would be about $150 billion.
I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
In an interview with CNN, Carney hinted how Canada might hit that number, using existing plans and expenses.
Canada has one of the biggest and most varied deposits of critical minerals,
which Trump was coveting.
We are going to develop those. We're going to develop those in Canadian interest. Some of the spending for that counts towards that 5%.
What you are hearing from our country and from our new Prime Minister is a solid commitment to ensuring that we are living up to our obligations.
Canada's foreign minister is also proposing a review of the spending in 2029, which happens to be the year Trump leaves office. Already some allies, including Spain and Slovakia, are balking at 5%. But NATO Secretary General says time to pay up.
My message to my European colleagues is stop worrying so much. Start to make sure that you get investment plans done. This is what you should work on.
One key detail coming out of this summit is how long allies have to get to that 5%. Carney said on Tuesday it's likely to be a 10-year deadline. Kate McKenna, CBC News, The Hague.
Alberta sovereignty wasn't on the ballot in 3 provincial by-elections on Monday. 2 of them won by the NDP and the other by the governing UCP. But in one traditionally conservative riding, there was an opportunity to vote for a candidate who supports sovereignty. Aaron Collins shows us what the results and the numbers reveal.
Signs of support for Alberta independence easy to find in Didsbury. Frustration with Confederation, a tradition in these parts. This riding elected the province's only separatist to the legislature nearly 50 years ago. Alberta sovereigntists had hoped that history might repeat itself last night. It didn't. The leader of the Alberta Republican Party finished third.
We need political action and backbone, and that's what the Republican Party of Alberta is going to continue fighting for all across Alberta.
The Republicans grabbed less than 20% of the vote in this race.
Most people are sort of looking for the existing party, the existing government structure, to come up with the right kind of solutions.
Still, in Alberta, tension with Ottawa is a constant.
It's almost as if they don't really care about the West that much. But that's nothing new.
Justin was never a good idea. He's just trying to fill Daddy's boots, and he couldn't do it.
The appetite for change strong here, but interest in independence tepid at best.
Albertans are a little bit frustrated, so there's an emotional attraction to the separation idea, but I think if it's well thought through, it's not very realistic.
The governing UCP won last night.
Let's stay strong and united, and let's get things done.
But some worry that a divide over independence could split the party.
I think that the jury is very much still out on the future of that movement.
The poor showing by separatists here is a blow to the sovereignty movement in Alberta. It's also key to keeping the United Conservative Party united, and potentially a sign that most Albertans would like to keep Canada united too. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Didsbury, Alberta.
A civil liberties group is launching a constitutional challenge against a Vaughan, Ontario bylaw. It is known as the Bubble Zone Protest Bylaw, setting limits on where protests can be held.
Nonviolent protest is part and parcel of a vibrant, functioning democracy. And although the right to peaceful assembly does have limits, these limits do not include banning protests that cause disruption, discomfort, or inconvenience.
The bylaw bans organizing or participating in a demonstration within 100 meters of schools, hospitals, or places of worship. The maximum fine for anyone found guilty is $100,000. Other Ontario cities have since brought in similar measures. In a social media post, the mayor of Vaughan says the bylaw intends to prevent protests that are not peaceful. Well, the Maritimes are getting a feel tonight for what Ontario and Quebec have been dealing with for days. A heat wave is making its way east, but it was still awfully hot today in Ottawa, with temperatures hitting 33 degrees. In Toronto and Montreal, it was 35, while Halifax hit 31. Heat alone can be dangerous, even deadly, but combine it with wildfire smoke and the risks get higher. Shayna Luck explains how a new study connected the two and what you can do to stay safe.
They smelled it before they saw it.
It's not the most common way that fires are discovered.
A brief evacuation after provincial staff went on patrol just east of Halifax and followed their noses to a small wildfire. This time, a helpful early warning sign. But with wildfire smoke across parts of Western Canada and rising temperatures and heat alerts in the east, new research is warning of the increased risk to health when heat and smoke hit at the same time.
Your body's just got a lot going on, so it's not surprising that when we combine those two exposures, they're riskier than either exposure alone.
The study looked at 21,000 deaths in the Vancouver area over more than a decade. Heat is the bigger danger. But layer on smoke, and the study found the risk of dying goes up 8%. That's compared with days that are neither hot nor smoky. People with pre-existing health conditions are most at risk. But a McMaster University respirologist says more research could be required to find out why.
Why does, heat potentially make smoke inhalation worse or, have more health effects? That's where we can then really get into giving very specific advice and changing practice.
Researchers do know kids, seniors, and pregnant women are at risk. So are those who can't take shelter at all.
It very much does bother me because I have asthma.
An extra danger for those living on the street.
The heat is really illuminating these cracks in our system, these real gaps that people have challenges that will go well before and beyond the heat waves that are playing out across the country.
When it comes to dealing with hot, smoky weather, experts say make sure you have a place with cool, clean indoor air, even if it's just one room in your home. And if you don't have access to that, try to keep cool while outside. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
A BC man has been identified as the second victim in last Thursday's Banff National Park fatal rockfall. Tonight, a friend who was with him on the trail shared what happened in their final moments.
I was stunned and I just froze at that point. And I remember my friend, even till the last moment, he was trying to save me by telling me to run. And I remember that's what he said. These were the last words he told me.
Khalid El Gamal is recovering in hospital, but his friend, Hamza Ben Halal, pictured here, died after he was trapped under the rubble as a slab of mountain broke away. 70-year-old Yuda Hinrichs was also killed, while 3 others were injured. Well, tonight, fans are remembering a major teen idol of the 60s and 70s, Bobby Sherman.
Hey, little woman, please make up your mind. You've got to.
Little Woman was the biggest of his 8 hit singles, and he was a big draw in magazines like Tiger Beat. Sherman first found fame as a TV actor, then ditched that life to work as a first responder. Bobby Sherman was 81. And there's some sad news to share from Quebec's music scene. Serge Fiori, frontman for the 70s progressive rock band Harmonium, has died. Premier François Legault says Fiori's work helped redefine the place of music in Quebec. Fiori died at his home today at 73. Well, after 6 long weeks of presenting evidence, the prosecution has wrapped its case in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs.
A lot of this is going to hinge upon what people are telling the jury.
Will the music mogul take the stand in his own defense? That's next. Plus, new research shows some global vaccination rates have stalled or even declined.
The patients that we see are often from regions of conflicts or war, or where it's very difficult to access vaccines.
How the new numbers raise fears about old diseases. And later, some East Coast students make sure their ailing classmate gets the graduation ceremony he deserves.
Felt good, going up there and grabbing my thing and being in an award was pretty nice.
Friends stepping up. We're back in 2 minutes.
We wanted to move forward. We collectively want to move forward, and having certification is the first step to do so.
The next step, he hopes, a date in court with Smith and Wesson. The Ontario Court of Appeal has given the green light to a class action lawsuit against the gun manufacturer. It is being brought by survivors and relatives of a 2018 mass shooting in Toronto. 2 people were killed, 13 others were injured. Well, in New York, the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs is wrapping up without a single witness called from the defense team. Ali Chiasson looks at the evidence, the arguments, and the questions the jury will need to weigh.
Were the escorts and ex-girlfriends who took part in drug-fueled sex marathons, known as freak-offs, trafficked?
It's a RICO conspiracy.
The question at the crux of this case is whether Sean Combs was running a human trafficking operation.
An organization is existing for the purpose of criminal activity, but the orders are coming from up top.
Combs has pleaded not guilty to racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The jury heard from 34 witnesses over 6 weeks, including Combs' ex-girlfriend, singer Cassie Ventura.
And she was the star witness.
Another ex-girlfriend testified that she felt she couldn't say no to the sexual encounters, partly because he was paying for her rent and lifestyle at $10,000 a month.
I think that prosecutors have done a very good job methodically bringing people onto the stand and telling stories that, if the jury believes are true, could prove every element of the various offenses.
The court also heard from male sex workers Combs allegedly hired and former assistants who booked their plane tickets and set up the hotel rooms with bottles of baby oil, allegedly at Combs' request. Where might there be reasonable doubt?
Defense attorneys argue that this was Combs' personal life.
Combs' team seems confident. After the prosecution rested, it opted not to call any witnesses, starting and wrapping its case in half a day.
They said that yes, Sean Combs could be violent, but violence alone does not prove these charges.
Combs didn't take the stand, but did speak in court on Tuesday. The judge asked him if it was his decision not to testify. He said, "Yes, Your Honor," and went on to tell the judge, quote, "You're doing an excellent job." Closing arguments are set to start Thursday. Then the jury will begin deliberating. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
New evidence tonight about declining global childhood vaccination rates.
In some places around the world, they're related to conflict, they're related to geopolitical instability, they're related to supply chain issues.
Why it's happening here at home as well. We'll dig into the numbers. Plus, as Israel continues military action in Gaza, protests continue around the world.
Having so many people on the streets for Palestine definitely sends a message to the government.
How to measure the impact. And also, it's a deadly and super potent synthetic opioid, which has already killed hundreds of Canadians.
He took just one, and it was poison.
A CBC News investigation, how smugglers are getting nitazines into the country. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. New research says you might be contaminating store-bought food with tiny nanoplastics just by ripping off the wrapping. The study released today in the MPJ Food Science Journal suggests you avoid microwaving food in plastic and use containers like glass or stainless steel when you can. Well, childhood vaccination rates appear to be stalling or falling, and according to a new study, it is happening around the world. Jennifer Yoon looks at the various reasons and some of the solutions.
At the Saskatoon Refugee Clinic, part of the job is offering childhood vaccinations to newcomers who need them.
We don't see a lot of vaccine hesitancy.
It's crucial work.
Patients that we see are from regions in the world where the vaccination coverage is a little lower.
In fact, that appears to be happening around the world, including here in Canada. According to a new study published in The Lancet, vaccination rates against diseases like diphtheria, measles, and polio have slowed or declined since 2010. Researchers estimate 15 million children missed out on key childhood vaccinations because of the pandemic, and rates haven't rebounded since.
In some places around the world. They're related to conflict, they're related to geopolitical instability, they're related to supply chain issues. In many high-income countries, they're related to vaccine misinformation and hesitancy.
Researchers warn lower uptake will lead to outbreaks of preventable diseases. Canada is already seeing a record-breaking measles outbreak. One solution: targeted vaccination campaigns for vulnerable populations.
They live together in bunkhouses, they work together in enclosed areas.
For instance, migrant farm workers who aren't already fully immunized, working in areas being hit hard by measles.
We saw a huge uptake among migrant farm workers through this voluntary program.
But researchers say the situation won't fully turn around until health authorities start convincing those who won't get vaccinated.
So new strategies are needed to encourage people to listen to trusted and reliable voices, including their healthcare providers, about vaccination.
The World Health Organization has set certain targets for 2030. Researchers say achieving those will take a huge push from governments around the world. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. How new deadly drugs, much stronger than fentanyl, get smuggled into your country.
This is illegal in Canada, right? You know that.
Yeah, I know.
But first,
Free the people, free the land!
powerful protests in London failed to stop the killing in Gaza. So why do these people keep at it?
Protests is one of the most powerful things people can do.
A renowned photographer and activist documents their moral anguish. The images captured by Misan Harriman cry out for a better world. He sat down with senior international correspondent Margaret Evans to explain what drives him and many others to try again and again to be seen and heard.
The drumbeat, not of war, but of Gaza's pain and suffering, raising its head on London streets time and again this past year. Sometimes feeling strong enough in the moment to crack open concrete and pierce the heart of a seemingly indifferent world.
I think having so many people on the streets for Palestine definitely sends a message to the government.
We got to give those people a voice. They're trapped and the world's looking away. We're free, we can come out and shout about it and raise their situation to hopefully for the better, for some changes to be made.
But not so far. Gaza's nightmare is nowhere near an end. Allegations against Israel of the gravest of war crimes have only grown, and most Western governments have yet to add teeth to the lip service they regularly pay to the sanctity of international law.
Free the people, free the land!
All the more reason to keep showing up, say the marchers. A common thread binding them, a belief in old-fashioned people power and its ability to change the world.
We have work to do, and sometimes we go backwards. But protest is one of the most powerful things people can do.
Misan Harriman is a Nigerian-born British photographer and filmmaker. He often turns his lens towards those who back their own moral conviction with action.
It is like bathing in humanity. And the sheer scale of humanity that you see, whether it's climate, Palestine, women's rights, voter rights.
Harriman is an ambassador for Save the Children and a regular fixture at London demonstrations demanding a ceasefire in Gaza.
I follow you.
He's also a bit of a local hero.
He's famous.
His own belief in the power of protest embedded itself in him from a young age, watching South Africa's anti-apartheid movement from afar.
I was a kid during apartheid. What could I do? I used to see things on the TV. During the Iraq War, I was a young man, but we didn't get the same live stream horrors coming from the people of Iraq as they were being killed, as we do from the people in Gaza.
Ignoring what's happening, he says, is not an option.
It's about right and wrong, and I know for sure that history has taught us that you cannot bomb anyone for peace. Certainly not children.
Both past and present suggest that to effect real change through people power is a difficult ask, especially in the here and now. Large-scale demonstrations in Israel demanding the government agree to a ceasefire in exchange for the Israeli hostages taken by Hamas in 2023 have consistently failed to shift Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's refusal. The largest public protest in the United Kingdom was in 2003, when more than 1 million people marched against the Iraq War. It didn't stop it, but analysts say the lack of an immediate result doesn't necessarily mean failure when it comes to the objectives of the protest.
Activists need to be just as savvy.
Sam Nadell is with the Social Change Lab, which tracks protest movements as drivers of social change.
So often you see protesters demanding the prime minister or a president step down, and rarely they're successful. But the legitimacy of that leader can often be fatally undermined by protests, which days, weeks, years later can end up leading to them stepping down.
He says events can be hard to read in the short term.
Protests, whether it's in relation to Gaza or the anti-Iraq war or climate change or any other issue, is often just one tool that activists, movements and campaigners can use, but it has to be accompanied by a range of other different measures.
Last month, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney joined Britain's Keir Starmer and France's Emmanuel Macron in issuing a statement criticizing what they called the egregious actions of the Israeli government, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank. It's far from enough, say activists, including Gary Pitcher, who calls the lack of a stronger response from Western governments shameful. But he also believes something has started to shift.
Just over these last couple of weeks, there's been a change in the way mainstream media in Britain is reporting on this conflict. They're being more critical of Israel.
Whether that's the result of protests like these, or simply that the sheer level of brutality unleashed on the people of Gaza has finally become unbearable, is hard to say. Sam Nadell says unbridled access to social media can be a double-edged sword when it comes to motivating group action.
I think there's definitely a sense of fatigue from the observers of all of this as well, because people do end up tuning out. And one thing I would say with protest is it can often be an important tool, if nothing else, an important tool to snap the public and the media attention back onto an issue.
It can be helpful in other ways too, say campaigners, a way of fighting impotence and despair in dark times. For Carolyn Heyman, it is a reminder of the never again promise after the Holocaust.
You know, when the Jews were being murdered, so many people didn't do anything, and the Jews could have said, where were you? Well, and so I feel like that's what the people in the Palestinians are thinking now. You know, we're being murdered, and where are you, and what are you doing?
Sorry, madam. Do you mind if I take a to the side?
For Misan Harriman, the act of joining others in common cause, bathing in humanity, as he calls it, and documenting it, is a salvation.
It's not a weight. It releases me. I would lose my mind if I witnessed the world as we see it today and not do anything about it.
Turning away, he says, closing our eyes, is simply not a choice.
So, Margaret, laws around protests in the UK have changed in recent years. How do the changes affect the dynamics on the ground?
it's really making it harder for protesters to organize because the police have new powers. They can basically shut down a protest ahead of time because of noise complaints. The police have the power to shut down meetings, actually go into a meeting, have a raid if they know or suspect that protesters are planning some form of civil disobedience before they've even carried it out. And the prison sentences are getting heavier. In fact, especially for climate change protesters, they are, getting prison sentences of up to 2 or 3 years. And that's a real change. People fear that what's happening is that protest is becoming criminalized.
And the actions like locking on or blocking traffic, do they affect how protest movements are perceived by the public?
I think for sure they do, and I think it's a very delicate balance. But Sam Nadal in my report would tell you that the research shows that even if there is disruption and people are annoyed by that disruption, it still keeps an issue high on the agenda. And so that's an important part of it. In terms of public opinion, it goes both ways in a way. And one young woman told me, look, women didn't get the vote by voting. So it's an important issue in terms of social change. And it's something that people fear that we're losing. We're losing that fundamental right to assemble.
All right, Margaret Evans, thank you. We want to talk about nitazens. Those are synthetic opioids, more than 40 times stronger than fentanyl. They are circulating on Canadian streets.
Seeing people coughing up blood, I'm seeing people dying.
A CBC investigation tracks how these super potent and deadly drugs are making their way into Canada. What it found just 3 minutes away. The smugglers of deadly drugs give us their trade secrets.
What do you label it as?
Opioids way more powerful than fentanyl, how that lethal cargo gets here, and why it's so hard to stop.
Each time a website gets taken down, it's back up the next day.
Those incredibly concentrated drugs are known as nitazens. That's a term you will hear more and more as their tragic toll keeps growing. Eric Cito from our Visual Investigations Unit breaks down how they get into Canada.
These are videos inside overseas drug labs, sent to us from people claiming to produce a synthetic opioid more than 40 times stronger than fentanyl.
Check it out.
Ready to be smuggled into Canada. And the thing is, all we had to do was respond to ads and posts on social media. And within minutes, we're on the phone with criminals.
This is illegal in Canada, right? You know that.
Yeah, I know. The drug, nitazens, a deadly opioid that's popping up all over the world.
Nitazene.
Nitazene.
They're called nitazens.
I'm seeing people coughing up blood, I'm seeing people dying.
And we're gonna take you inside this emerging crisis.
It can kill people, right? I just want you to make sure you know that.
That is a game. Nitazens are so powerful, it can be hard to wrap your head around. So to give you an idea,
let's start with morphine. Heroin is roughly 2 times more potent than morphine. Fentanyl is up to 40 times stronger than heroin. And nitazens, they're up to 43 times stronger than fentanyl. And they're killing people around the world.
He took just one, and it was poison.
He was unresponsive on the bed, and he was turning blue. He'd already gone.
So how many people have died in Canada? Well, we ask every corner across the country. And since 2021, there have been over 300 deaths caused or suspected to be caused by nitazens. The drugs are flowing into Canada. In recent years, police have seized nitazens in busts across the country. 2 busts in Quebec alone last year accounted for over 1 million fake pharmaceutical pills laced with nitazens. Why would criminals want to use nitazens when fentanyl is right there? I'm obviously not a fan of organized crime groups, but they're going to look for more efficiencies, right? And if you have a more potent drug that can be cut and achieve the same effect with lower volumes, then that's appealing.
Where are these nitazens coming from?
75% are coming from China.
Here's a mugshot of Ontario man Matthew Fan. CBSA intercepted shipments of nitazens from China, allegedly for him, hidden in pet food.
So where are people finding nitazens? Online ads are how this market functions right now. There's going to be websites that might advertise it. They're going to shift. Each time a website gets taken down, it's back up the next day.
If you close down a business entity overseas, they're going to recreate a commercial enterprise the next day under a different business name.
Our investigation, supported by open source investigators at Bellingcat, found hundreds of nitazene ads and posts all over the internet. Images of powders, chemical names for various nitazenes, and contact info on platforms like X, Reddit, LinkedIn, Google, and Behance, which is owned by Adobe. We also find them on e-commerce websites in India. So we respond to dozens of these ads, and within minutes, we're on the phone with criminals. 14 different sellers who are all part of a global network based in India, China, the UK, and the US. We find this seller on Exporters India. Umesh Enterprises says they're an Indian pharma trading company that's been in business for over a decade.
Is it coming from India or China?
It's coming from India because recently, due to the issues going on between the US and China with the tariffs, there's been a lot of blockage from China. So,
You know, it's because it's illegal in Canada, right?
yeah, I understand.
It's dangerous as well. If it's the wrong supply, it can kill someone.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. It's a controlled substance, yeah.
They reveal how they smuggle it into Canada.
What do you label it as?
Yeah, usually it can either be caffeine, detergent. Sometimes we can go with spices.
This seller, who says he's from the UK, has another way he hides drugs.
We can send you 5 basketballs, maybe you put 100 grams in each basketball and then we send to you.
Others show us how they conceal nitazenes in Chinese herbal products and teapots. And they can be delivered the same day.
The route that we use most often is, from Michigan, Detroit to, Windsor. So we use the tunnel, and that's easy movement.
How long would it take?
Maximum should be about 10 hours.
We get so many images from sellers, barrels of chemicals and pill presses. We start to notice similarities. These sellers claim to be different, but they use the same scales and the same Bitcoin address. We ask all the sellers to show us proof they've sent drugs to Canada before. One who calls himself Jerry shares images and videos of their lab in China.
Hello, this is a video for Eric on May 22, 2025.
And records of past shipments to Quebec, labeled as pearlescent pigments. And this one to Ontario, which has a clue, a tracking number. We put it into the FedEx tracking system. It leaves Beijing and arrives in the US in Anchorage, Alaska, then Memphis, before being delivered in Waterloo.
We're worried that this will continue to rise as an ongoing threat. Crime groups are not dealing in product, they're dealing in death.
Now, in response to CBC's findings, Canada's fentanyl czar, Kevin Brosseau, said he takes the threat of nitazenes and similar synthetic drugs very seriously. He said they pose a growing threat to public health and safety. Here's another story we're working on. With the auto industry under threat from U.S. tariffs, is it time for Canada to build an entirely homegrown car?
Canada has got to think for itself. Make a vehicle that is one that many Canadians can drive.
You could make $5 or $10 billion disappear and have nothing to show for it.
Do we have the people? Yes. Do we have the know-how? Yes. But do we have the desire and the passion?
Good.
Is this one of those times when you have to separate your heart from your head?
You can't make emotional decisions about money and technology. These are much too complicated, much too expensive to make on an emotional basis.
That's the story in the coming days right here on The National. Next, students throw a grad celebration for their sick classmate.
I never really expected that would happen, that they would all come over. So that was pretty incredible.
Why they traveled 230 kilometers for him in our moment. This is a photo of Lachlan McCabe in the middle of two of his classmates who shave their heads in support as he gets treated in hospital for leukemia. So Lachlan's junior high graduating class didn't want him to be left out, so they took the ceremony all the way from rural PEI to a children's hospital in Halifax. And tonight, that's our moment.
I've been in their class my whole life, so like almost every single one of them, from K to 10, I know them all pretty well.
He hadn't been feeling well for a while. I'll probably get emotional. He hadn't been in school for quite a number of weeks. It was not nice to get the diagnosis, but then they called me out a little bit later and said that they'd see what we could figure out and try to find a way to celebrate Lockie and get him his certificate and let him graduate.
Felt good, you know, going up there and grabbing my thing and being handed an award was pretty nice. A few couldn't come, but it was still pretty cool.
I never really expected that would happen, that they would all come over, so that was pretty incredible. It's just nice to see everybody kind of gather around him together again, and for him to hang out and have those laughs and just that time just, you know, chilling and being a kid.
It was pretty cool, different, but I don't know, really just cool.
It's nice hearing Lachlan talk about how great his friends are. You only get friends by being a good friend, and judging from your buddies there, Lachlan, you are a fantastic friend to them. They and we send you all the best. Thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime, on the free CBC News app and subscribe to the Nationals YouTube channel. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.